We can't start next presentation just like that. After listening so much of wisdom, it is important to just sit down and take few deep breath and let it get assimilated. Bring attention to your toes. Take deep breath and attention to your toes. You may or may not close your eyes, but that's the quickest meditation I learned from my Buddhist friend. He said, this is one meditation we can do anytime during the day, and we don't have to even close our eyes. Deep breathe, and again attention to your toes. Okay. So the presentation as it has happened, it was supposed to be like that. It can never be contained in 30 minutes, and so as much you are looking forward to interact with the Professor Bhavuk, I was also looking forward, and that is one of the prime reason I am here. So thanks to Professor Khatri and Vishal for organizing this, and Indian Academy of Management, because they had been instrumental in some of these kind of satsangs which are much required in any field of knowledge, and more so in the Indian management. My intention to discuss are these things. First is the need for indigenous research, and why and how we must give a try. And I am going to talk about the 3 avenues which are already explored. There is some body of knowledge already existing, and that can give us the leads to move ahead in this direction. What at best can be said about the Indian scholars is that while we are very good in understanding various theories proposed by scholars in the western parts of the world, and many Indian scholars are also very good in identifying the limitations of those theories to capture Indian realities, we seem to very rarely propose any new concept and theories. So this is, I am a student of appreciating inquiry, and in last many years I have had opportunity of implementing appreciating inquiry in so many OD interventions. So this is the most appreciative I could be about the Indian scholarship in the field of management. We are good at understanding theories, but we hardly propose anything new. As if there is nothing else to be discovered, and for more so, and over and above that, we sometimes think that why to propose, why to reinvent the wheel when theories and concepts are already there, why to develop new? But the fact of life is that human reality is socially constructed. We give meaning to the phenomena, we give meaning to things, we give meaning to our life. And human science needs to be culture and language specific, language sensitive, because even in the economic development there is no global theories of development. Even at the UN, it is well recognized fact that there cannot be a developmental model which is universal. There was thinking 20 years ago, it was there even 10 years ago, but after 2008 crisis and after 2013 UNESCO resolution, they have accepted that there cannot be a universal model for economic development. So if there cannot be a universal model of even economic development, certainly there cannot be a universal model for organization development, people development, and team development. Another important thing, another useful thing about doing context sensitive research is that maybe some practicing managers will start taking our work seriously, which they hardly do at this stage. So there is one universal, if not anything else, this is one universal problem that management scholars think, that there are hardly takers of their theories and research amongst the practicing managers. Probably the acceptance of our work will be more if we do more contextual research, and acceptance will be more for the practicing managers. So these are some basic stuff because of which we must get engaged into the context sensitive work. If we look at the Western, even if we look at the contemporary knowledge, we see there are so many theories in motivation, leadership, learning, and They haven't stopped personality, and they haven't stopped with one theory. So if Western scholars themselves have not stopped with one theory of motivation, they kept developing new perspective, they kept coming up with the new paradigm, why we should be shy of exploring the new paradigm and proposing something new? Developing the new concept and theories are possible if we understand the process of living as a continuous process of learning. And every learning, a living process is the constant learning, and that happens because there is a dynamic relationship between the human being, society and environment. So there is always some knowledge creation happening at the moment to moment along with learning, and all those occasions of knowledge creations are the moment of truth which can be converted into the systematic inquiry. And that's what we were talking about, breathing culture, because all the time anyway we are living and breathing, we have to just be conscious of it. Every language is a storehouse of folk knowledge. Just, I learned this exercise from Professor Bhavuk. I owe primarily two professors for whatever I could do in these many years. One is Professor Rajan Gupta, he is my guide, PhD guide at MDI, and Professor Bhavuk, whose work I have been reading and growing up as a scholar. One simple exercise he does, and I am just doing it. Can we give name to, can we identify the name in our culture about whatever construct we are studying? We are studying leadership, for example. What is the Hindi or Bangla or Tamil name for leadership? Netritva. Huh? Netritva is one thing. Okay, so this example has just come. And if you look at the Netritva, what is the root word for Netritva? Netra, to see. So leading is not overpowering. Leading is to see, to vision. So the leader is the one who can see more and further than others, and then automatically, naturally perhaps he is so-called leader. If you look at any phenomena, commitment, what is the Hindi word or Sanskrit word or Tamil word or Telugu word for commitment? And probably we can come across some dimension which is not captured in the construct of commitment in the existing literature. So just two examples I have written. Number of manuscripts. Number of manuscripts any culture has is an indication of how rich the traditional knowledge is. That can be a gross, very gross way of assessing the strength of the cultural knowledge, the existing body of the cultural knowledge, but it can be one of the measurement. There are total 28 to 30,000 manuscripts from the Greek culture available. Can you imagine how many Sanskrit manuscripts would be available now? And there is a board, there is a body under government which acquires and which preserves the manuscripts just in Sanskrit. And I am not talking about the Agam Sahitya of Tamil or Bangla or Assamese, Sindhi. Sindhi is one of the richest language. We are not talking about that, only Sanskrit. Can you, any guess?
Almost 1 lakh.
28 lakhs. So there is a lot waiting to be discovered, explored, and to be understood. And one funny example is, if we don't do it, someone else does it, we get something very interesting depiction of this kind of rich cultural heritage and wisdom traditions. One example is the Indus Valley civilization. We all have studied Indus Valley civilization in 6th or 7th class in our school. And what do you remember most about it? Drainage system. If you go to any civilization, you go to any culture, and ask these people, and suppose if any way we could ask these Indus Valley civilization people, what are you most proud of? Do you think they would say drainage system is something which I am more proud of? Can any culture in its right senses might have created wonderful drainage system, this would be the last thing they are proud of. But this is what science, because this, and this is not the fault of the scientist who is depicting this, because this is what he could see. You look at the Harappan dance, you look at the Harappan artifacts, toys, and toys have the yogic mudras. So you have yogis, you have yogic mudras as the form of the toys. When a thing becomes toys in a culture? When it is all pervasive, which is percolated down deepest level, then only that thing get converted into toys. So now we have Superman toys, we have Pokemon toys. That's how the Harappan has the toys of yogis. But why anyone who is not part of the culture, not part from the psychological aspect, psychologically not part of the culture, they may not find it so interesting. So if we don't do it, we will get the knowledge in the form that best thing in this industrial civilization was the drainage system. There are so many other reasons why we should not indulge into the context sensu. Very fact that we are leading economies of the world. If from the purchasing power parity we are number 3, from the overall size we are number 5. It is poised for the rapid growth with the huge population. Whatever we do, it has going to impact our trade. It is environmental, manufacturing method we choose, whatever we choose, it is going to have impact at the global level. But India matters not only because of its economic power. India matters because of its wisdom tradition. Worldviews and ideals of the human life expounded therein. We keep on talking about the work-life balance, but if we look at very simple stuff, I'll give 2 examples how the worldview presented in the wisdom tradition can alter the whole paradigm, the whole theoretical paradigm. There is a whole literature on the work-life balance, then there came work-life enrichment, then there come work-life something integration. 4 purusharths are there for 2000 years at least, which talks about there are 4 aspects, 4 purusharths of life: dharma, arth, kam and moksha. None of the one is more important than other. And then there is a concept of pancha yagna, which have come from 3 rinas, and 3 rinas gives a perspective about the giving model of motivation, which Professor S.K. Chakravarti, late Professor S.K. Chakravarti talked about. Most of the motivation theories are need-based theories. I need this, then I need that, and then I need that. This 3 rinas perspective says that life is to give back. It is a debt, and that's a fact of the life. This body can't exist without the support of the whole ecosystem. So there are 3 rinas we have to repay. What is the first rina? The Rishi rina, because whatever language I am using is also coming from the wisdom tradition. Whatever I know is built on standing on the shoulders, giants' shoulders. So Rishi rina. Dev rina, because there is a universal order which is operating over here. So we should attain the internal harmony, because internal harmony results in the external harmony, and we owe to there is a Dev rina. And then there is a Bhutarin or Pitrarin, because our biological lineage is there, that's why we are here. So life is an opportunity to repay that debt. Now whole perspective about motivation is changed. It is not about satisfying need, but it is about repaying the debt. Can we ever repay the debt? Can we repay the debt for the wisdom tradition? Can we repay the debt of our parents? Can we repay the bhut yajna hum kehte hain? The bhut yajna is all the living and so-called non-living are contributing to the sustenance of my life, and I had to repay to that. Can we ever repay to that? So can a person who is living with the perspective of repaying the debt, rina perspective, can this person can burn out and stressed whatever he or she does? Why there is a depression, anxiety? Because we think that I am the center of the universe and center is not satisfying me and not giving me joy. World anyway don't gives joy to you. It is us who gives joy to the universe, because it is the source is inside. But if I don't provoke that worldview, we will keep expecting world to make me happy, and I consider myself at the top of the pyramid, and that whole pyramid thinking will start. So the whole entitlement thinking will generate. Instead of the pyramid, if I say I am the center of the circle of which there is no periphery, the center is everywhere and there is no periphery. I start with the giving perspective of life, and that's what is the life is, because if you look at any organism other than human being, they are giving more to the planet than they are getting it. It's a biological fact. So, wisdom tradition can gives us the worldview and ideals of human life. Why so it is important? Because that's what late Professor Sumanta Ghoshal in his last paper of his life wrote. Bad management theories are destroying good management practices, because theories build the worldviews, and we are not only the propounder of the theories but consumers of the theory as well. So, we are constantly consuming the theory. The kind of theories we consume will have impact on our worldviews and quality of life. So, on this background, I would like to share 3 avenues, the existing avenues where some work has already been done. One is the insights drawn from the traditional wisdom. Second is grounded research in the Indian context. And third is pedagogy in Indian management. There are some interesting work going around all of us, and we need to give attention to it. If we pay heed to that, we can take things forward from there. Indigenous research using insights from traditional wisdom. We have already talked about the worldview and how the traditional wisdom may not give us answer to how to make the vehicle, but traditional wisdom can give us answer how to look at life. In terms of the worldview and identity, we can still draw a lot from there. And then there are other fields where traditional wisdom can still give the answer for our existing problems, like water management. Now, I am part of the IIT Bombay, and there are people who are working on the water management, and they are looking at the ancient systems of the water management, and they are trying to revive it, and that's how some parts of the Maharashtra they could work. Art of Living Foundation worked on those things and revived 20 rivers, which is, from the modern perspective, from the modern calculation, it's an unthinkable job, can be done in 5 years. Ayurveda, again, we can get a ready-made insights, usable things. So, there are some work already being done in this field. These are few examples. Indian perspective on self, personality and development. Please look at Professor Anand Paranjpe's work. He spent his 20 years of his life to write this classic. How many of you are aware of that? And that's a fantastic work on the notion of self, personality. He has distinguished it, looked at it from the Western perspective, explained the Indian perspective, tried to synthesize it. 20 years, he forgo his promotion as well. That was a conscious decision. In 76, he shares that he asked his wife that, I am a good teacher, so this university will not throw me out, but if I do this kind of research, it will not be published. So, I will not get promotion. Will it be fine to you? Because I will give you enough money to survive as a grahast, but I will not be promoted to the professor. And wife, being Indian wife or whatever, she agreed to that. He actually did not get promotion, and in 84 his dean calls him that your work seems to be interesting because now it has been started quoting in textbooks. So, if your work has started getting into the textbook, perhaps you have made some contribution, and that's how he got his professorship. And again he started with another work which would have otherwise never would have got promotion. Emotions and emotional intelligence in the yogic perspective. Stephen Parker's work, this is the one yogi and a neurobiologist, keeps coming to India from 71. He is associated with the Munger Bihar School of Yoga, has written extensively about the psychology. But we don't read it, and our universities don't subscribe this kind of reading. Positive psychology concept, Professor Bhavuk's work, means we have grown up with that. Understanding self and well-being based on Ayurveda. Ayurveda can be an excellent way to look at the personality an integrated perspective. So we in management research talks about, we in management research talk about the parsimony and the comprehensiveness. But along with the parsimony and comprehensiveness, this is one continuum. If we add one more continuum, which is analysis and integration, probably we will get more wholesome theory and integrated theories. Work of Alok Kumar, very young scholar, recently joined XLRI. He did his PhD from XLRI, worked on Sankhya, and I had tears in my eyes when I was reading his thesis. I was his examiner. He has not only looked at the characteristics sattvic, rajasic, tamasic from the very surface way, in a very superficial way, but he went into the depth of the Sankhya, and for that he had to, he actually went to study really to the gurus and then translated that into the English. One of his work is already there in the Journal of Business Ethics, which is perhaps 10% of his work on the title of Sattvic Leadership. So there are people who are working on this, on these things. Karma Yoga in general and leadership, Zubin Mullah, Venkat Krishnan is writing for so many years about the Karma Yoga from this perspective, that perspective, association with existing leadership theory. In last 10 years, I have been working on trying to work on the spiritual climate with thanks to my gurus. Then there is another field called grounded research on how Indians think, behave, and social culture of India and its implication, culture in organization, nature of functioning of the institutions in India like academic leadership. What is the nature of academic leadership in India? Peculiar practices in the Indian organizations or Indian subsidiaries of the MNCs versus Indian MNCs who have started operations elsewhere. What is the distinction? How they operate? Is there any distinction between the Indian MNCs and other MNCs? These are the ready-made questions available, waiting to be discovered and explored. And these are the scholars. Professor J.V.P. Sinha has spent his whole career, last 40 years. We had a discussion, I had a discussion 2 weeks ago, and he is working on the role of well-being and understanding the sambandh in Indian context. The very institute where we are sitting, Professor Uday Parikh, Professor Uday, we all are aware of the this organization citizenship behavior. We are all aware of the social motivation, the grants work. Professor Parikh talked about very similar thing in 60s and 70s on extension motivation, and none of our young scholars actually pursued that work. And it is very similar to the work of Grant and work in the field of OCB. Indian business system, can we understand organizations as organizations? So there are two scholars, my guide Professor Rajan and is one of my Guru Bhai, Abhinash Panda. They worked on they said that you can't understand Indian organizations because you can't understand any business organization without looking at the context of it, and Redding's framework, which is so-called Western, they used to understand the Indian business system, understand the Indian business system. Looking at that framework, understanding Indian business system gives insight about the nuances in the Indian management. Kanak Savapati's textbook on Indian economy, you will look at, and I'll conclude in 2 minutes, you can look at how culture affects the economic decisions. In spite of repeated attempts at so many levels, Indians are just not spending in the share market. Still the participation is 4, 5, 6%, and that is very similar to in Germany as well as in Japan. And if you look at the saving pattern, it is 30% plus to GDP. And Indian growth and development is mostly financed by the domestic saving, which is done by whom? Which is not done by the institution, which is done by the lady in the house. तो इंडियन इकोनॉमी को किसने बचाया? वो बोलते हैं वो जो महिलाएं घर में रहती हैं उन्होंने बचाया. Interestingly, government, in order to promote the investment in the capital market, they reduced the bank rate. When bank rate were reduced, actually saving rate increased to compensate for the lost interest amount. That's a cultural reality. Richa Awasthi's work on culture in Indian MNC, she is working in the last 10 years in this field. Again, student of Professor. There is a very ripe field on social entrepreneurship. Maybe some of you may take it up. Social entrepreneurship is the way of life. It is going to save the planet. If planet is going to be saved, a lot has to do with the social entrepreneurship. And that is very unique in India. And then there are a lot of pedagogical experiments going on which have the seeds for theoretical insights. Social projects are done in SP Jain, and there is a lot of insights to be digged, to be discovered there. Professor Subhash Sharma's book, Eastern Window, Western Doors, he says that Western approach is more like a windows and Eastern approaches are more like doors. And his book is like replete with so many models, and there is a deep urge to synthesize the East and West, and many of his models are highly potential models. They can be converted into empirical inquiry and can give great insights again. In last 5 years with my team, I am trying to implement the yoga psychology, and we have a very hard data. The people who are, and now there are papers on impact of yoga based practices on moral reasoning, the interface of positive psychology and yoga based practices, and as a result of this pedagogical experiment, we realized that broaden and build theory can be critiqued. The very self-determination theory. So one of our student Chirag is working on the self-determination theory. He said, sir, self-determination theory talks about the self, but the very definition of self is very different in Indian context. Where self starts, and we talk about the self-transcendence, and that is the essence of the spiritual experience. So what is the strengthening of self has to be understood very differently in the Indian perspective and in the so-called the contemporary perspective. And that has implication on the whole theoretical edifice of the positive psychology. So, agenda for resurgence with one invitation. Fundamental critical research. This is an invitation for you. This many of you can do. Decolonizing the construct. What is development? What is growth? What is the objective of education? What is relationship? What is the workplace spirituality? What is work-life balance? All these constructs can be decolonized, and then we can have many more insights once we decolonize those. We can work on this. Applied research in the area like education, development, engineering. What is working over here? There are so many experiments going on because we think that we can't write paper on that. We can't draw a theoretical implication of that, but that will be useful research for the policy makers. We need to question one more thing, that our management scholarship, our management scholars and management scholarship as such in India is sufficiently contributing to the nation building. When nation is actually getting reconstructed, what is our contribution at this point of time? Research methodology, moving away from a typical positivist perspective to trying out different methods. That is the research for resurgence. Start research from a social question, a problem which we are dealing. Look at the Indian traditional wisdom. Don't discard. I am not saying look at it. Don't discard it. There is a lot. There might be there. Please don't discard it. Start literature review from the traditional wisdom and the Indian scholars. If you don't find something, throw it out. And try multiple methods. Don't get wedded to the positivist survey-based method. Try ethnography, action research, interpretive work. And one invitation. I'm really full of gratitude to have this opportunity to interact with all of you, because even people in this room decide that we are going to contribute very simply to the agenda for the India-centric research. We can change the sphere of the management research in next 5 years. Only invitation is that you can carry on whatever kind of research you are doing and whatever your guides are saying and whatever is required for your promotion and for running your household and getting married, as someone was saying. Take only one context sensitive research as soon as possible, complete it, get it through to the point of completion. That's all. If as a group we can decide that all of us will take one context sensitive research according to any of the points presented in this agenda, we will be doing great service to the management scholarship in India and creating something which we will be proud of in next decades to come. I'll end this with a statement of, again, Professor Rajan, who said that this is my plea to try developing concepts and theories rooted in Indian context, that we have nothing to lose but our second-class status as scientists, scholars in the human sciences anyway. We are sitting on the gold mine because we are living in one of the most complex and I believe progressive societies in the world today. Let us dig into ourselves without fear and take on the emerging world. Thank you very much. Is the invitation interesting for you? Some of you are still thinking, should I accept or not? Is this, okay, so let me ask differently. Is this invitation worth accepting? Yes. Okay. So why don't you spend 5 minutes quietly with yourself, think about and write down what is one thing you would like to examine. In the whole agenda of the research for resurgence, it may be about decolonizing the construct, it may be about some societal problem, it may be about using different method for the context sensitive question, essentially any of these, and what is one thing, one research you would like to carry out, which is rooted in the Indian context. Spend 5 minutes.
So research methodology is something which is empowering research methodologies, empowering research methodologies. When we are talking about research methodology with Indian methods, we are talking about empowering the research methodologies.
Maybe, yeah. In the process of doing India context sensitive research, we can develop new methods. Yes. So it's 5 minute time for reflection and think. And
so basically, how the students migrate from a smaller city to a bigger city, and how their consumption pattern change. And I'm using the grounded theory methodology. So this is my current area of research. So a lot of inputs I'm getting in this with respect to how the whole identity of a person changes when they move from a smaller place to a bigger place, and then the various nuances and pictures.
There is big literature on immigrant population and Pandey. It's very old literature. So Santhals, what happened, etc. Look at that literature. And then you can compare over time how India has changed. And then you can see, and then there's also the intercontinental or international immigrant pattern. So when you do something like that, you can focus on how Indian youth moving from small town to big town. So grounded theory will give you a theory of what happens to the consumption pattern. Then if you synthesize it with what we find in the old days in India itself, today when immigrants move from one country to another, and if that synthesis leads to some new insight in consumption patterns, then I think you can target, American Journal of Sociology or American Sociological Review, because there then you are showing, see, the method is respected. So grounded theory is respected everywhere. So you start from here, and then by synthesizing, you show how this is unique or how it adds to what was there or how a new theory emerges. So that's the kind of stuff that we can be proud of, because then we have added to the world knowledge. But if you don't, I'm still happy, and you should be happy, because what you are saying is useful for 2 trillion economy, for 1/5 of the world population. So we are good with it too. So the other benefit is, it's kind of, an additional benefit. It's a windfall, if you like.
What is more interesting about this is that this phenomena is not just an interstate thing. I mean, this is happening globally across nations and across cities and across places, where you see that there is a kind of change that is happening, especially when I'm looking at this youth population that is there. So this can be further translated into
what I was trying to say is if you get sucked into the global literature, then you know what Nareshji was telling will come. Why Indian data? How does it add value? But if you have your own theory, what works for India, and then say how it adds to the other literature, then people would listen. So it's just a question of strategizing how you present. But even if you stop there, that's enough, because we have 1/5 of the world population, and in 2 trillion economy, we need to understand how the youth consume. So that was my point.
Yes. We all are.
That comes in my mind side. We know the concept of social entrepreneurship. So can we relate the concept of Sundarkand with the social entrepreneurship? Because if we see the mythology of Hanuman in that total role of Hanuman, he has not taken anything from the Ram, but he has destroyed everything in the Lanka. So that is how the optimal utilization of resources or something like that. And based on that theory, he can relate or give the construct for the social entrepreneurship.
So we don't have a theory yet, so don't run. But Sundarkand is beautiful. So if you are studying Sundarkand, if that is your sadhana, then see how you will connect that to so many things. But to say there is a theory there, we have to see what the theory is. So in the next session, we'll talk about what a theory is, so maybe that will help. So we don't have to discuss that now. But stick to Sundarkand, that is a wonderful thing to do. Because that's your source of inspiration. And if you are one who chants it every day, every week, then that's a wonderful thing to do. So, see, this is what I study Bhagavad Gita, and then I connect with everything else with Bhagavad Gita. And so, to use Swami Chinmayananda's method, when he was traveling abroad, all his young disciples, one of them is my friend, they studied Upanishad. So when Guruji came back, they were very excited, as young scholars are, and said, Guruji, we went through the Upanishads. And the way Chinmayanandaji was, he said, you idiots, you don't go through the Upanishad. You allow the Upanishads to go through. So let Sundarkand go through you and it will do magic to you. And be open to that magic, and some research will come out of it. Because Hanumanji for leadership is an interesting concept. To be Hanuman, when we say somebody is Hanuman, right? The person does not feel insulted. So so there's something in Sundarkand that we should stick with. But we'll talk about theory a little bit later, because I don't see a theory the way you describe it.
You raise your hand, sir.
So actually, I'm working in the sector of education, like student distraction in private institutions. Like I'm from Sharda University, right? The private institutions. The stuff that we get are different from what you get in premium institutes like IIMs, and there's a different model. But the distraction of students in the classroom is too much. And what are the reasons for that distraction is, and what model can we adopt, what teaching pedagogy we can adopt? Because everyone is like, IIMs is doing this is doing that. But I don't think that the same model fits everywhere. With the B-class institutes also. So what could be the area, what could be the new teaching methodology, or how we can reduce the student distraction in the classes, and because their output is different, what they want is also different. So what could be in the education sector, especially in the private education?
This is the question. Yeah. Would you like to? I just wanted to stop to the question, not about the comment and describing the problem. We have understood the problem and the question. Maybe.
See, my first thought that came to me is, why are we concerned about the student being distracted? If we think from, if I said it, you would not believe it, so I will cite Sri Aurobindo. He said, you cannot teach anybody. People learn. We cannot teach. So if you follow that wisdom tradition, they will learn. So let's try to facilitate their learning rather than worry about their being distracted or not paying attention. So when I teach face-to-face, I also teach online. When I teach face-to-face, I tell my students, you have paid for my salary, you have paid for the air conditioning, If you are tired, you have a bad day, go ahead, fall asleep. I will subliminally teach you. People do fall asleep, and that's okay, And everybody is behind their screen now. So, like right now here, everybody has notebook, but in my class, everybody is behind their screen. And I don't know what they're watching. So I walk around. So this is a strategy. So if you walk back, then you can see everybody's screen. So if they're watching a movie, but you can't penalize them. It's just like, if I'm boring, then why should they listen to me? So I think we should think about this learning. Everybody learns. And our job is to maybe motivate them, inspire them as a teacher. But I'm sure you will find your solution. I know. You're just thinking what we do in our case. And, I don't get behind the screen. I'm not concerned. So we reward them for learning certain concepts, for doing certain assignments, and we can see whether they have learned or not. Beyond that, this is just like if the dean told me what research to do you think I will follow? Like Anand Pranspedi. He basically said, I'm interested in this. If I don't do, nobody else will do. He did it. He lost a promotion opportunity, but it came back to him later on. So the same thing with the students. Maybe they are not learning now. Maybe they'll learn in the future. I'm not sure. But I think we should remember everybody learns in their own time. This is what one of my spiritual mentors said. You can give sunlight, you can give water, you can give fertilizer, you can move the plant from shade to light, but you cannot pressure cook the plant to blossom. All plants blossom in their own time. So that has become my, as a teacher, I can do everything and then wait for them to blossom. And if they don't, the universe has better plans. I don't know if that is.
I think we are on time. There is a next session, and for that we need to come back after tea on time. So we are around. Professor Bhavuk is also around, so we can carry forward this discussion, carry on this discussion. Let the conversation be on.